Welcome back, dear ones, as we tackle today on Monday, May the 4th, Matthew chapter 20 and Proverbs chapter 4, as we find out what nuggets you got from God's Word and from those two chapters, what nuggets I'll get from God's Word, and we'll get rich together studying nuggets of God's Word. For me, in Matthew chapter 20, I zeroed in on verses 11 through 16 after Jesus tells the parable of this landowner who hired people in the morning and then kept hiring people, kept going back to this place where people were looking for work, but no one had hired them. And in verse 11, it says, when they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These men were hired last, worked only 1 hour, and you have, hear this phrase, made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. But he, the landowner, representing God, answered one of them and said, friend, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. If I want to give the man who was hired last the same as I gave you, don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first and the first will be last. And I wrote this note here in my Bible. I said, old, all capitals, uppercase O-L-D, capital, bold. Old Christians can forget how generous God is, and think that God owes, and I wrote them, and then I scratched out them and wrote us, owes us for our work. So when you've been a Christian a long time, you can forget that this salvation is so amazing and everything we do is just an overflow of His grace through us. And then I wrote under this is why we never stop reaching the lost. Because if it's been decades since you have burned in your heart for the lost, then you forget that everything we do is a penny here or a penny there of fruit that God produced through us. But He gave the billion, zillion reward of the gift to us. And there's never a comparison for what God does to us for what God did for us. And so when we reach the lost, we always are burning with, God is so generous, God is so generous. And what these early laborers forgot was these guys out waiting all day. They've been wanting work, and they've been looking for work, and they've been standing around all day, which was exhausting, hoping for work, looking for work. And they'd lost compassion on the guys who didn't have a job. So if ever we lose compassion on those who don't know Christ, we would forget how generous God is, because God may give someone who gets saved at the last minute the same reward as some of us who served Christ for 40, 50 years. And our response needs to be, what a generous God He is. Now let's go over to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7, one of the greatest verses in all the Bible. Just a single line that says, wisdom is supreme. Therefore, get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding. And I wrote exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Then I do a little summation, and I talked about the things it might cost. And I wrote pride, ego, patience, effort, and pain. If it costs you pride, if it costs you patience, if it costs you pain, no matter what it costs, for me, I'll pay any price. God, if you'll just help me when I go through something to understand your heart. I've said this before. Once you understand, it was worth it. Once if you can find something of the heart of God, if you can learn something of His heart and His kindness and His love and His truth, especially if you can help other people, it was all worth it. Though it costs all that you have, get understanding. And that's why you're here today. I'm so proud of you that you're here to get understanding from God's Word. I hope you have a fantastic day.